If you were given the superpower of invisibility, what would you do? Would you unbutton the buttons of your sleeping colleagues? Or would you knock on the door of your beautiful neighbor's house? The main character Kane, in order to get this evil power, Kane injects the unstable invisible serum into his veins. The tingling sensation spreads instantly throughout the body, and then the skin starts to melt. Muscle tissue is also decreasing with the naked eye. Soon even the last bit of bone was gone. However, the most difficult part of invisibility technology is not invisibility, but how to recover. 3 days ago, the main character Kane was not invisible. At home, looking at the beautiful neighbor across the street, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He was able to synthesize a stable state of the revert serum factor by a miracle. He couldn't wait to tell his ex-girlfriend's current colleague Linda the good news, and Linda immediately dragged her current boyfriend Matthew to the lab. They were ready to do live experiments on the gorilla first. With the injection of the restorative serum, visible blood vessels began to emerge, but just when Kane thought the experiment was successful, the chimpanzee's heartbeat suddenly began to accelerate. After reaching a critical point, it stopped beating. Linda quickly used the defibrillator. She performed CPR over and over again. The gorilla's heart was restored, and the restoration reaction that had just stopped continued. Looking at the recovered gorilla, everyone was happy. This is a great invention that will win the Nobel Prize. However, the next day, when the research results were presented to the military, Kane said the restoration serum had not yet been developed. What was this all about? As soon as the meeting was over, Matthew came over and asked, why didn't he report the results of his experiments? It was a great opportunity to make a name for himself. Kane was the only one who understood. He knew that once the military knew about the success of the research, the most critical clinical trials on humans would not allow their team to interfere. The Nobel Prize would not go to Kane, so he made a bold decision. He was prepared to conduct human experiments directly on himself. In order not to involve his colleagues, Kane took the invisible serum and injected himself. As expected, his body went through a series of complicated reactions. The human experiment of invisibility has been completed. Now, if only the restoration experiment in 3 days could be successful, this technology will directly change the fate of mankind. In order to protect Kane's safety, the team took shifts. Late at night, after a colleague's short-haired girl is asleep, the buttons of her dress were suddenly opened one after another. She woke up with a jolt and saw on the thermal imager that Kane had just returned to bed. Naturally, she understood what had happened, although Kane slyly said he had just woken up and just had a cup of coffee. Female colleague Black Sister even to go to the toilet with a thermal imaging camera to rest assured. But fortunately, the 3 days passed quickly. Now is the time to inject the recovery serum. However, no one expected that an invisible murderous demon would be born. With the injection of the rejuvenating serum, the veins instantly became visible. The next second, the invisible man's muscle tissue began to appear. But when it comes to the most critical stage of skin recovery, the huge tearing sensation made him extremely irritable. Despite the efforts of his colleagues, they were unable to prevent Kane from becoming invisible again. The recovery of the serum has failed. In order to be able to watch Kane, a silicone skin was made for him. Even though this special silicone is breathable, Linda still thoughtfully made a slit in his mouth and cut 2 holes in his eyes. All subsequent restoration experiments failed without exception. Physical and mental torture made Kane extremely miserable. Finally, he escaped from the lab against all odds. He drove his Porsche and enjoyed the air of freedom. He forgot that he was an invisible man. He even enjoys the thrill of being different from other people. When he arrived home, he ran into his beautiful neighbor from the opposite building who was leaving work. An evil thought came to his mind. Kane rang the neighbor's doorbell. The moment he opened the door, he slipped quietly inside. What happened afterwards cannot be described, so we will skip it here. When he returned to the lab, he saw that his colleagues were fully armed, and forced Kane not to step out of the laboratory until the research restored the serum. Kane was unhappy to be reduced from a brilliant scientist to a guinea pig. In the middle of the night, he took advantage of his colleagues' inattention. He took the hard drive of the previous video and swapped it for the security camera, so he could go out and do whatever he wanted without being noticed. Then he went to his ex-girlfriend Linda's house, just in time to come across the image of his rival colleague Matthew and Linda kissing. He became angry and smashed the glass. Matthew saw no one outside the window. Linda immediately called the lab, but his colleague watched the video. Pretty sure Kane is still in the lab and could not have walked out. However, Linda did not believe it, so she drove to the lab quickly, touched the bed with both hands, but no one was there. The failed experiment is a small matter, but if the public knows about military research into such terrible invisible technology, then it's going to be a problem. So Linda and Matthew told the project leader about it. The director immediately announced that the research team would be disbanded, but just as he was about to take the matter to the Pentagon, he found that the phone lines had been cut. At that moment, there was another sound coming from the back door, so we went out to check. To his surprise, a dark figure suddenly appeared across the room and pushed him into the pool. The wife heard shouting and pushed the window to check, but she only saw her husband struggling in the pool alone. The shadow just appeared in the water in the shape of a man, and choked him until he died. When his wife came downstairs, the shadow escaped through the back door like a transparent man. He is the Invisible Man Kane. In order to keep his invisible secret from the public, he was going to kill everyone related to the project. The first was the Black Sister, and the moment the rest of the people arrived to see the body, everyone realized the seriousness of the problem. Matthew was ready to take Fatty to the first stage of the counterattack. However, before they could react, Fatty was grabbed by Kane and dropped dead alive. Matthew was next, even though he had thermal imaging glasses on, but all around the heat source cannot see. But in the nick of time, Linda appeared in time, Matthew from the danger of rescue. Next is the girl with short hair. She reacted quickly and spilled the blood bag on the ground, so she could see Kane's position clearly. To her surprise, this guy came from behind. Due to the disparity in power, the short-haired girl could only watch as the anesthetic from barrel of the gun was shot into her body. Then her neck snapped. Now there are only 3 people left. Suddenly, a steel crowbar went through Curly's heart. Matthew tried to help, but was also stabbed in the abdomen. Linda just pulled out the crowbar. She didn't notice that the door was locked by Kane. She watched Kane flip the switch on the cooler from the outside. The constant low temperature caused Matthew's body to lose temperature. If you can't escape, you will die here. At that moment, Linda suddenly had a flash of insight. Take the wire and wrap it around an iron handle. This can be made into a simple electromagnet after the power is applied. Finally, Linda opened the door. Meanwhile, Kane put nitroglycerin in a test tube spinner to create an improvised time bomb. He thought he had everything under control. Just as he was about to get on the elevator, Linda came in with a flamethrower. She let out all her anger. Maybe it's the invisibility potion that has the effect of strengthening the body. Kane was still alive even though he was burning like this. Linda simply used the flamethrower to turn on the fire sprinkler. Suddenly Kane attacked from behind. In the nick of time, Matthew woke up and knocked Kane out with an iron bar from behind. At the critical moment when they were climbing the elevator shaft, Kane, who was still alive, grabbed Linda's leg and pulled her down. In front of Matthew, he gave Linda the kiss of death. However, Linda saw the moment. One foot stepped on the elevator connector. The demon was sent into the fire. Finally, the two of them managed to escape from the lab. Imagine if you were given the superpower of invisibility. What would you most like to do?